collectively, we are living in really difficult times. There's no denying that.
I have 1,000 techniques to take away your depression. And so I'd like to say not being depressed isn't the same as being happy. So it's only been the last 20 years that we've started to think about what they call downregulation and upregulation simultaneously. How do we suppress, cut down, limit pain, the suffering that you're in, but simultaneously add positivity and joy? I actually was a trauma specialist. Joel Morgowski invited me to go to the first International Positive Psychology Conference. I did not want to go, but I went. And when I got there, it was like
the virtual gratitude visit. What's that and how can we use that?
You are not only giving, you're receiving. So you become the person that you've just given that gratitude for, that engaging in something positive, writing a letter to somebody that you feel you have gratitude for, but maybe didn't fully express it.
Does it help us touch a part of ourselves that we have lost contact with? Hello and welcome to the Healing Mindset Podcast, brought to you by Marpa Minds, a network of next generation mental health clinics delivering Spravato and ketamine therapy for people with depression. I'm your host, David Drapkin, and our guest today is Dr. Daniel Tomasulo. He's an internationally recognized psychologist, professor, and pioneer in the fields of positive psychology and psychodrama. He serves as the academic director and core faculty member at Columbia University's Spirituality Mind-Body Institute, where he trains the next generation of clinicians and researchers. Dan has a PhD in psychology and an MFA in writing. He brings together this science, creativity, and storytelling in his own unique approach to healing, and is widely known for groundbreaking work in interactive behavioral therapy, which is a form of group psychotherapy rooted in psychodrama, and for his ability to integrate hope with mindfulness and embodied practices into the treatment. He's a prolific author, and some of his books include Learned Hopefulness, The Positivity Effect, and the award-winning memoir, American Snake Pit. So, in our conversation today, we actually enter into a state of flow together. And you may even notice where it happens as you listen to us chat. And this practice of refinding our flow is actually an essential component of Dan's approach to therapy. It helps people connect to their unique self, that part of them that is spontaneous, wants to experience happiness, and is always ready to express itself creatively. Dan goes on to explain what is positive psychology, what it means to him, and how radical it actually is when we compare positive psychology to the standard psychotherapeutic model that tends to diagnose us with illnesses and problems, and it pathologizes people as broken or faulty. Dan also has some amazing lines and terminology that he's created over the years that simply blew me away, and I won't go into all of them now, but I particularly love that instead of calling it a to-do list, he calls it his tadada list, because it focuses on success and winning rather than some burdensome duties to get out of the way. Dan is always looking for ways to use positive psychology to change how we see ourselves. So listen in during the conversation and try to start using as many of the techniques and the micro goals that he mentions in your own life. Enjoy this episode of The Healing Mindset. When did you first become a positive psychologist? And was that part of your kind of natural, true self?
Oh, I love it, David. Your first question has got like multi-layers already to it, right? So that's it. That's how it happens. I was not like in line to become a positive psychologist. I didn't get caught up in the zeitgeist of the whole thing. You know, it wasn't like, oh, this is the next natural thing. I actually was a trauma specialist and had actually written the diagnostic criteria for things like PTSD. And, you know, I was in that clinical world and working with people with intellectual and psychiatric disabilities who had a very, very high level of trauma in their life. When your cognitive abilities go down, the things that can traumatize you go up. And so these were really, really very traumatized folks. And I worked with them and other people with trauma for a long time. But then I went through a trauma and it was like, oh, wait a minute. All of this stuff really doesn't work very well. I was stunned. And then, again, not for nothing, but I knew the right people, I knew the right protocols, I knew the research, I knew all that stuff. And quite honestly, after that traumatic experience, nothing touched me. And this was really kind of scary. And I uh, I had trouble remaining being a clinician because my mind was just hijacked by all the recurrent elements you get with PTSD, and it was like rumination and, startle reaction. I had everything, and it really sort of blew my mind. It's like, here I am, um, supposed to be an expert in this, and nothing touched it. And my best friend, uh, Joel Morgofsky, invited me to go to the first International Positive Psychology Conference. And I really did not want to go. And he said, no, this is a new thing. He was already aligned for positive psychology. And I did not want to go, but I went. And when I got there, it was like mind-boggling. Joel just bought his tickets and, he's just like, we're going. And he said, because you're miserable and you need something different. And that's what best friends are for, right? And, Marty Seligman was there, but holy mackerel, he started bringing in all the research, everything from Zimbardo's work on the Lucifer effect, the psychology of evil, all the way through all the new stuff that Barbara Fredrickson was doing, Bob Valeron was doing, all of these researchers. And it was the first time in maybe a year plus that I really felt hope. I really felt inspired by the research. And that was really the beginning. I decided to go learn more about it. And then I actually went to Marty's program at UPenn and became a student of his, and then afterwards joined the faculty there as his assistant.
There's something I think powerful around connecting with a model, theory, discipline, technique that has helped you yourself
Mm.
as a human, the wounded kind of healer, archetype, as well as then being able to step into that to help other people. And I think a lot of us practitioners, clinicians, feel that way, that we find something that has helped us. It's helped us to touch a part of ourselves
Yes.
that we lose contact with. And so one of my follow-up questions here is, with positive psychology, does it help us touch a part of ourselves that we have lost contact with that is inherently good? Like, is there almost like a theory within positive psychology that says we are good, humans are good, we're born good, and we're returning to that natural state?
The things to do in order to feel better. And so it was a much more hand to mouth. This deeper philosophical thing didn't come until after I got used to. I call it the Karate Kid, just to date myself. The wipe on, wipe off thing. You had to learn the basics of how to activate positivity, and then that became fascinating. It was sort of like, oh my God, if I can do these simple things and nothing else has really worked, and these things have changed my core emotional state, how powerful is that? And how extraordinary it is that I don't have to believe in anything. I just have to do the technique. Um, that being said, as you move into positive psychology more and more, the interventions are like the gateway, right? They sort of pull you in. You start to feel, oh my goodness, I don't have to ruminate, or I can start to feel better, or I'm an agent of change in my own thinking pattern. Once you start to get that sense of agency, then you start asking the philosophical question: is like, oh, how did that? Am I doing that, or is there something underneath this that is unearthing? And that ends up being incredibly true. And it's incredibly true, not just at a humanistic level that there's goodness in there that we want to tap into and harvest, but it very readily lends itself to a spiritual core that, I don't think you can do positive psychology for too long without running right into that. So that that's the mechanism. It's like, just do these things. It's sort of like somebody says, uh, drink 64 ounces of water a day and you'll feel better. And you don't have to know the whole theory. You don't have to know the like that. But all of a sudden you start to feel better. Then you go, what's in the water?
Really significant techniques and skills and practice and work that's required. But the good news is it's unique to each individual and their life to put it into practice of how to make it work. So I want to get into the nuts and bolts, the skills, the practice, and particularly the micro goals, because I love your focus on micro goals.
Yeah.
Before we do, let's just tell people about what is positive psychology and what is it positive in comparison to? Is there a negative psychology? What's it positive about in particular?
Yeah, I think the definition has morphed in the last 20 years. So I think you would, I would be comfortable saying that it is a um, sub discipline of psychology. So you could have like developmental psychology, experimental psychology. So it's a sub discipline of a much larger science that involves helping people. Um, Live a good life. And this has to do with things like fulfillment and um, life satisfaction. So it's more encompassing than just being happy. It's not just about feeling good, it's about living a rich, flourishing life that's sustainable. Um, that definition then starts to include some of the negative stuff, like how do you bounce back from something that is difficult? Well, we could talk about resilience, but it's not just about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward. Things like post traumatic growth now. We only used to talk about PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, but now what we know, particularly after 9/11, is that. Uh, Not everybody who experiences a trauma succumbs to the difficulties around the trauma. They use it as a bouncing off point. So positive psychology is the study and application of how we live a sustainably good life, and that's as individuals, as families, as communities, and as the world.
So, from that premise, I want to get mildly controversial with my next question, just to kind
Yeah,
of be devil's advocate. Collectively, we are living in really difficult times. There's no denying that. You
true
know,
enough.
you're talking about epidemics, depression, and trauma, and suicidality, and addiction, and poverty levels, and we're living in really tough times. And a lot of people are experiencing that in their lives through what's called treatment resistant depression and trauma. So there's this idea that individually we're resistant to treatment, resistant to healing. Collectively, we seem to not be able to heal and be well.
Mm.
So how do we, on one hand, accept that we are at this collective level of kind of really challenging negativity without letting us get so defeated? It's like, oh, I'm treatment resistant, nothing works, nothing can help me. How do we get positive? Like, how do we not just get without getting fake, Dan, without that like toxic positivity of going, oh, it's going to be okay, just get over it, cheer up, it's not such a big deal. It's like, but actually it is like, it's really like there's no denying it right now. I think we're in an age where we can't deny how bad things really are. So how do we deal with that without getting like pretending and faking toxic positivity?
Again, a terrific question. A way to start thinking about it is how we've approached difficulties in the past and how we think about what's wrong, right? Um, if we start to look at the history of psychology and kind of like where we're at now, almost everything in positive psychology has happened in the last 20 years, period. Maybe you could say the last 25 years, but actually, the real research stuff is only the last 20 years, right? So we have in psychology something known as a treatment prevalence paradox, right? Depression and anxiety are on a runaway schedule, right? If you take a look, doesn't matter who you look at. It could be the World Happiness Report, it could be World Health Organization. Doesn't matter what angle we come at it. Depression is on the rise, anxiety is on the rise, and for psychology, what's happened is we keep coming up with more and more interventions to deal with depression, right? Well, we have, like that. So the number keeps going up of how we're going to deal with this. Um, and the problem keeps getting worse. So you have this treatment prevalence paradox. If you appreciate why that is and why that persists, is that psychology was over influenced by the medical model. The medical model was basically triage, right? It's like, who has a problem that we have a solution for, that we could provide the solution to alleviate suffering. So you break your arm, we fix your arm. It doesn't make your arm better. It just brings it back to like a the previous condition. It's not going to make it strong. So we followed the same model. And so that thinking was, if we take away your depression, if we take away your anxiety, if we take away all the maladies that you bring to the situation, you're good. And that model in psychology systematically has not worked. And there's a million different reasons for that. I've written about that a lot, but there's a million different reasons for that. The not the least of which is the idea that uh, the, it doesn't make your happiness increase. I have 1,000 techniques to take away your depression. It doesn't make you happy. And so I'd like to say, not being depressed isn't the same as being happy. So it's only been the last 20 years that we've started to think about um, this, what they call downregulation and upregulation simultaneously. How do we suppress, cut down, limit the pain, the suffering that you're in, but simultaneously add positivity and joy? Now, something really fascinating when you look at thousands of studies, you realize that this last 20 years, when they introduce something positive, right, the natural result is for the negative to be reduced. But when they reduce something negative, it doesn't naturally increase the positive. So we've got this kind of situation, right, where it's not really enough to stop suffering. And that's why, just to look at it at the world level, we've only been investing, for the most part, in what's called negative peace. Let's stop the conflict, stop the war, stop the pain, stop this, stop this, stop this, stop this. There's been extremely little what they call positive peace, which is, what are we going to do to enhance well-being? And, you know, the metaphor I use is, if you walk into a dark room, you could spend all day trying to get rid of the darkness, but the easiest way to do it is to light a candle. One small bit of positivity dispels the negativity. So we we now are being activated by so much that's wrong. And the reason why I study hope, I specialize in studying hope and hopefulness, is because hope's the only positive emotion that requires negativity or uncertainty to be activated. If you think about other positive emotions like joy, or bliss or gratitude, they don't need something negative. But hope that needs something negative or uncertain as an irritant, as an activator, as a catalyst. The Greeks knew this, right? When Pandora opened her jar, right? Hope was living in the jar with all the maladies of the world. And when she let them all out, she closed the jar quickly and kept hope. What's the metaphor for that, right? The idea is that hope knew all of the maladies intimately. It lived with them, right? So it understands them at a deep level. So I think we're really, truly just coming into a phase, a time in humanity, a time in science, where we're learning how to convert what could be negative into something positive. Just briefly, um, a lot of the work I talk about uses natural phenomenon, right? So if you think about wind, water, and the sun, these are three horribly destructive forces, right? The wind can cause tornadoes and bring devastation. The water can cause floods, and the sun can cause skin cancer. But you can build windmills, you can build turbines that the water can change, and you can create solar energy. They each become sources of energy if you learn how to harness it. So it's negative if it's not harnessed, and it becomes positive when it is. So my perspective is that we need to start seeing the difficulties as a call to action, not just an opportunity to throw our hands up in the air.
That works on so many different levels. On one level, there's that analogy. If all you've got is a hammer, then everything you see is a nail.
True enough, Maslow, yeah, for sure.
But there's some deeper stuff going on there with our thinking. It's how we interpret reality and situations. If we see them as problems and if we identify with that, whereas actually if it's an opportunity, without getting all kind of Disneyland white picket fence, I don't do that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
the hope is within that box where all the maladies are. So particularly around the peace building bit, it's almost like we're building peace inside ourselves with
yes,
between our parts. And I like internal family systems, and you're big on psychodrama.
yes.
So I've not done much psychodrama, Dan, but you're an expert in that as well. Can you talk a bit about why psychodrama is particularly effective and for what kinds of people, and how it helps people to maybe find to practice and develop and find this part of themselves that responds well to a positive psychology approach?
The thing for me is to recognize that there have been pioneers all along the way, right? Who have been grounded in something other than the pathology. I mean, probably the most famous of those, of course, is Freud and Jung. And you realize that Jung broke with Freud because he anchored our psyche, our healing, our humanity on a spiritual base, right? And this was not Freud's. Freud had a very different perspective, and not to go with right and wrong or good and bad, but just with this idea, it's like well, if you start in one place, you're going to build something that rests on that foundation. So, for Freud, there was a lot of pathology there. For Jung, the individuation of spiritual being was at the core of what he spoke about, right? And if you start looking at that timeline, there were a couple of people, certainly when you look at Frankel's logotherapy, and he was the one who introduced tragic optimism, this idea that something really bad can happen, but that we can transcend it, right? We can evolve it. You take a look at Maslow, a little later timeline, but Maslow, when he did the hierarchy of needs, at the very end, his last couple of papers were about transcendence, right? So there was something about this spiritual growth and spiritual evolution. And in the middle of all of that, and certainly Rogers is in that mix too, but you look at something Moreno did. Moreno started the whole idea of psychodrama, right? But a lot of people don't realize that he was the one who coined the term, invented the concept of group therapy. So every form of group therapy came after his work. And that includes, by the way, all the 12-step programs, all the others, and certainly Gestalt, all that stuff was downstream. And the group therapy was based on a spiritual premise. This idea that uh, our our job is to be creative and spontaneous, and that this is because this is the essence of what the universe is doing, and how we choose to be with people, and what are the blocks to being with them. And Moreno put this whole theory out about being positive and being connected to other positive people was going to have really long-lasting effects in your life, and being either neutral or negative was going to have other effects. And you come along and you start seeing little bits of research. The Framingham study, the heart study, right, from Framingham, Massachusetts. They didn't really know exactly what they were doing at the time, because when you do a big study, you study everything in the hope that something will work out. But one of the things they found out is that heart health was connected to your sociometry of who you connected to. Then they found out that happy people connected to happy people, who connected to happy people, they're happy people. In other words, there was a layer of happiness and positivity surrounding the people who had fewer heart problems. Well, it's kind of cool. Moreno's first book talked about that kind of sociometry and who shall survive. So it's this idea that those theories of peace, spirituality, well-being were around, but they were not robustly researched. So the concepts were there. The Jungian concepts were there. He was doing research on the unconscious. Moreno was doing, but it wasn't the kind of stuff that we're doing now. Now we're taking a look at what happens if you have a positive emotion biochemically. What happens when you have a negative thought or ruminating negative thoughts? What happens there? So it just starts to frame it that these theories were around, but only now we're starting to get this sense of inner peace and outer peace, right? And what have all the spiritual masters said, right? That you've got to have inner peace first before there's outer peace. So the connection now is, can we find ways to look at cultivating an inner core of well-being that starts to radiate out? This part here is just very exciting for me. So shut me up if I go on too much about this.
Permission to get spiritual, Danny. Yeah. That's what you're basically saying. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's totally cool.
If you look at not just the theory, but the facts, right? Take a look at what HeartMath is doing about heart rate variability and this idea of what they call heart breath. If you breathe in as if your heart is breathing in, and release as if your heart is releasing this creates something they call cohesion. And this is ridiculously serious research, right? And basically, you move out of your head into your heart. And once you do that, once you move into cohesion, they see the heart as an electromagnetic field, right? And so what happens is, if you're in a good space because you're in cohesion and you're in alignment, it seems to radiate out from you, right? And when that radiates out from you, it radiates to the people next to you and around and around and around. Now, if I just leave that alone for a minute and come back to Moreno, the reason why he coined the term group therapy is he talked about something known as the collective co-unconscious. That when you get a group of people together, that they have a consciousness to them. And science is only now catching up to his theory. It's like, yeah, if you get a bunch of people who are all meditating, who are all in sync with each other, who are trying to get their inner world aligned and have that aligned with the outside world, what you start to notice is that there's a type of resonance that's happening, an alignment between being okay here, being okay collectively, and then having that move out into the world. So just paying homage to lots of theories, Franco, Maslow, Erickson, of course, thrown in there. Lots of theories that laid that groundwork. But now we're starting to see some pretty hard science that shows inner peace is a prerequisite and necessary for outer peace. Um, I have some actual new research that shows a little more of the mechanics of that, but I'm not sure if you want to hear about all that right now. But it's this idea that the alignment is palpable, necessary. We can demonstrate it. There's something called GCP2, Global Consciousness 2, right? It's a project that came out of Princeton, and it got started. I was at Princeton in the late '90s, on a teaching fellowship, and there was this guy named Roger Nelson from the physics department, and this is the place where Einstein was, right? So, but there was this place we all went to tea at 4 o'clock. Um, and you got people there who are like ridiculously smart, but every place hushed up when Roger Nelson walked in because he was like studying the relationship between emotions and the impact of emotions on non-physical matter. And that's global consciousness. And they were able to show that really strong positive emotions and really strong negative emotions have an impact on random event generators, little things that are supposed to just
Yeah.
move. Anyway, it goes on and on, but the idea is now the science is catching up with the theory that inner work for outer change is really essential.
Dan, that was a beautiful little journey we went on together. I love that. Oh, I took a couple of heart breaths. I haven't heard of that before, but I breathed
Yeah.
into my heart, I breathed out of my heart, and I felt something change. And I feel a little bit different now. I really do. And I love what you're saying about coherence within ourself and being more of that self energy, and also resonance with others as well.
Yeah.
And that's the ripple effect, but that's how we can have a collective impact. Little personal question, Dan. As you were talking, you were moving your body in a certain way that had a little bit of yin and yang about it. Do you do Tai Chi?
Okay. I don't do Tai Chi, but I do yoga. And
Okay.
so, yeah, I think I don't know if you've ever seen my symbol on my website, but it's the yin yang symbol with a smiley face on it.
Okay, nice.
Took me 5 years to get the trademark on it because my trademark lawyer said you've combined the two most ubiquitous symbols on the planet. You'll never get the
Right.
trademark. But we did. So, yeah,
I'll go
little
check that
yin
out,
yang.
everyone. Yeah. So yeah, the way you move, and as you were talking, you were moving your body and your hands in a really fluid way. And so the question I want to ask about now is this concept that you write about and teach about of flow state. And you've mentioned it
Yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
spontaneity, flow, kind of peak performance. Tony Robbins is very big about this as well.
Yeah,
Because in a way, it sounds like when we have this flow within us, breathing from the heart, this resonance within, we feel happy. Not just
yeah,
an absence of depression, but we feel happy. We feel good. We feel
yeah,
alive. We feel good about this is who I am and this is how it feels to be me. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what is this flow that you speak of? And how exactly do we generate this more in our life?
What a great question. The flow concept. If you and by the way, just historically,
Mm.
Miguel Csikszentmihalyi is the guy who wrote the book, right, on flow. He wrote it in 1976, the exact same year that Marty Seligman came out with Learned Helplessness, right? So that's why they're both considered to be the fathers of positive psychology, but they were aligned, opposite ends at that time, right? But here we have two really amazing pieces of research. Flow ends up being something that every known culture has something like that, and yet we weren't talking about it. We weren't researching it. Now I'm being very mindful of where I put my hands. So I should go to sit on my hands now. So, but um, so that's in 1976, right? Marty comes around as president of the APA in 2000, and by 2004, he and Chris Peterson developed character strengths, right? And character strengths are based on 6 human virtues that they also found were all over the world, right? And what are the 24 character strengths that are related to these virtues? And then they come to find out that each person has 5 or 6 top character strengths. Now, here's the kicker, right? Um, that 1976 research on flow, what they find out is that people who go into flow have much higher levels of life satisfaction and well-being, right? The more often you go into that, the better. And flow is when you're doing a task. It's not like a state where you're anesthetized or something like that. You're doing something, and the doing of that something becomes autotelic, meaning that as I do this, time melts away, everything melts away. It's the doing of the thing that has the payoff, not that it leads you to something else, right? You're so invested in what you're doing. So they use rock climbing as an example. It's like the rock climber is so invested in the moment. Yeah, it'll be nice to reach the peak, but he's much more invested in the moment. Well, they found out that the character strengths, the top character strengths, are what people use when they go into flow more often.
Mm.
So the teaching of character strengths now becomes a portal to flow, which is a portal to well-being. And so this is the greatest advance in positive psychology. I think it's the greatest advance in psychology, period, because all we had before this was the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, to show all the things that are wrong with people. We never had a compendium of everything right. So the character strengths end up being a way to move towards something. And this is the link between humanism, Moreno, Frankel, Marty, the flow. All of these things come together because we're not moving away from what's wrong. We're moving towards something that's strong. It's an energetic shift.
Mm.
And so if you start to fold in this idea of spirit, it's like, we're not born moving away from something bad. We're born with a sense of wholeness that needs to manifest. Now, if we're not given the right nutrition, then not this, that can be limited and blocked. But this idea that we're essentially moving toward a type of greater wholeness and greater awareness and something that's pulling us, not pushing us. That's the difference of having theories and research now that say, you know, we're human beings that crave and need and desire love. That's something we're moving toward versus being fear-based, where we're just moving away from fear. So I think that's the shift now that science is able to bring to this. We're moving towards something more holistic, more engaged, more powerful, more loving, rather than just being afraid of the next damn thing that comes up.
I love what you just said, especially the bit down around we're not moving away from something that's wrong, we're moving towards something that's strong.
Yes.
And to
Yeah.
me, that reinforces that what we're doing individually with this work that you're talking about, it's not a means to an end. It's not some arbitrary, instruction manual, and then we're going to get this prize at the end of it. It's this complicated thing. It's actually a process that itself is the goal. Like in each step of that process of moving towards strength, of embodying flow, of feeling more love and gratitude and hope. That's it. That's the goal. But we're just
Yeah.
trying to do more and more and more of it each day. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably why you're talking about the micro goals piece. Because the more
Yes.
times that we can do that every day, the more of our reality, that positivity and gratitude and hope starts to take hold. Because it's on that micro level, yeah?
Yeah, that's it. That's it exactly. If you can tolerate me talking a bit about a quick story.
Mm.
I traveled to Moscow and with Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, so he's Mike, right? And I had read Flow when it came out, but then I read it again when I was studying positive psychology, obviously. And now I'm at a conference in Moscow with Mike, right? And something always bugged me about the book, right? And it was that there's a term in there that I mentioned before, autotelic, right? I have never heard that word anyplace other than in Moreno's theory, which is that the doing of something is the payoff in and of itself. Right? It's not some other goal. It's like the doing of this thing pays off in the moment. And so I said to him, we're having this sort of private conversation. And I said, Mike, this thing autotelic, I've never seen it anywhere other than in psychodrama. And in only the way that he could say it, he said, you didn't read the introduction to the book. And I was like, no, I didn't read the introduction. He's his best friend at the time was a guy named David Kipper. And David Kipper was a researcher in psychodrama and was actually a person that had written a blurb for a book that I had written on psychodrama and group therapy and stuff like that. And he would read through Mike's manuscript and make suggestions, including the chart about how flow works or whatever. And he borrowed very heavily from Moreno's theory, which is like, oh, now this makes sense, right? Now this all makes sense because I was so enamored with it because it was really stuff that I had been trained on and knew about in this idea of spontaneity. So the concept of micro goals was born out of this idea that if you're in this moment, there's immediate feedback that you're getting about engagement because ultimately flow is about deep, deep, deep engagement. And one of the problems that certainly happened during the pandemic is that people became disengaged. They had some goal, they're going to graduate, they're going to get married, they're going to, but now all those goals got shattered. They had shattered assumptions about their goals. And one of the things to make it very concrete was to come back to this idea of micro goal, that we're just going to see what we can do in the next 10 minutes. And what that naturally fosters is a type of autotelic response. You're in this moment doing the thing that's paying off almost as you're doing it. I have 10 minutes. I'm going to send out these 3 emails. So you're getting these little dopamine hits, boom, 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 which fill you back up, which keep you engaged. So the flow, the psychodrama, all of that led to this sense of spontaneity and being present. And this presence has to do with very rapid feedback about engagement. And so the micro goals just became a very functional way to engage in something because you'll feel good by the engagement. You feel good by the fact that you got 3 emails done.
Amazing. And there's an aspect of kind of positive reinforcement here, and it's instantaneous, and it's kind of gamification a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I just want to share, I did 2 things today I'm very proud of. I want to let you know, my wife and I went for an amazing little hike in the nature reserve nearby for an hour and a half. And that got me out of a little bit of a grumpy, crappy mood and put me into
Yeah.
just feeling grateful. And I had a good sweat and took a shower afterwards. I felt like a different human being after that. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
this afternoon, I said, right, today I'm going to clean the kitchen windows because they've been
There it
seriously,
is.
they were just covered. It's quite
Exactly.
dusty in where I live, and so I got my spray bottle. I got my
Yeah, yeah.
paper towels. I cleaned it, and then I went outside to clean it. I was like, oh, I forgot to bring the chair. I can't reach the top. Should I just leave the top and just? It's like no. So I went back in the house. I got the chair, came back out again, and that proved something to me, Dan. Around, I've been meaning to do that for weeks. And the fact that
Yeah,
I did it
yeah,
now, so the fact
yeah,
I went for a walk with my wife
yeah,
reinforced, I kept the momentum going. It
yes.
made me do that positive thing I've been meaning to do for weeks. And I even came back to get the chair. So I got up to the top corner of that window.
Right.
So that is
Exactly.
like literally just in my mind, it changed.
Yeah,
I felt like a different human,
absolutely.
like positive
Absolutely.
and better. So what are some, I want to go more into the goals, the actions, and very briefly tell people about your to-do list.
Yes.
Before we
Yes.
pressed record, then I was like, oh my God, my to-do list, and I'm trying to be organized and accountable. But I think because I call it a to-do list, that's not setting me up to succeed.
Yeah, it's yeah. And I do. I write a lot. I have lots of blogs, books, and stuff like that. And whenever I pitch an idea, I always start with the same phrase, and the same phrase is, "I've got a great idea." And then the editor rolls his or her eyes, and then they say, "Well, some of them are not so good. Some of them are okay." But the to-do list is like. That's what I call my list because it's I want to celebrate the completion, the moving toward, rather than the obstacle. Oh, this is what I have to do.
Mm,
It's like, but this is what I'm looking forward to celebrating. So I think there's a lot about. A lot just about mind frame, that we're going to shift the way we think about it, that is shift our mindset. And one of the things we know from a lot of research, from George Bonanno's research in resilience, is that having a very flexible mind is really the key to being resilient. So I think in connection with having things to do and the goal, your story is so instructive, right? Because you said, oh, I took this walk and actually that felt good because I had a sense of agency about
mm,
that and that I could unhook for a little while, and this felt great being in nature. So you had a lot of different elements doing that. Then come back and say, oh, we're going to clean the window. And then you do part of it and actually that feels good. But then when you go to do the other part of it, it's like, I don't have the chance. And then it's like, you know what? I felt good doing this. I'm gonna invest a tiny bit more, get the chair
mm,
and do this, and then you do that, right? And now you've got little cycles of dopamine, and by the way, they're learning about dopamine, that the dopamine itself isn't what makes you feel good. The dopamine is what makes you want to do something.
mm,
So it's like, oh, now I've done that. Now I feel good. So that starts what Barbara Fredrickson calls an upward spiral. So it's
mm,
this sense of I'm an agent of change. I have agency. I can choose what I do. I can choose how I think. And as I do that, I get things done. So this to-do, let me come back to this to-do list,
yeah.
because I teach this in one of my courses where we talk about having the right mindset, the right, these small things. But the thing I begin with is not just the mindset has to be positive and that you're moving toward it, but even before that is a pause. I actually call it positivity.
Oh, nice.
Because it's only when you become aware that you're on some kind of hedonic treadmill, that you're on some kind of loop of just doing and doing and doing and doing and setting further and further goals and doing and doing. It's only when you pause for a minute that you have a chance to kind of catch up with yourself. And I also believe that if we're talking about inner peace, that the pause is super essential so that you just take a moment to stop doing everything that seems to be so ridiculously important. And in that pause, you breathe. That's where the
Mm.
heart breath comes in. And you start taking care of just being present and being aligned and settling down. And that positivity is the beginning of agency because it's deliberate and intentional. If I say, I'm going to take a break, you're already showing that you can change what it is you're thinking and doing just by
Mm.
stopping.
Mm.
Before you go, so before you decided to take a walk, there was a moment before that where you just said, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. So the pause becomes essential to
Mm.
transformation. So pause, and then it's like, what is it that I can get done in the time that I have? And then as you start moving toward it, you can release this sense of pause because now you're ready for the engagement. And the engagement brings in flow, and the flow then brings in character strengths and that kind of thing. So positivity and tada.
I love it. So if ever you're not in much of a busy work period as a psychologist, you could always go into marketing and branding. And you have a gift for words, but also logos, that yin yang smiley face. Wow. New income stream out over there. But yeah, there's something really beautiful around that positivity. And it reminds me of in the old days, Dan, which, before cars were automatic with their gears, they
Yes.
were manual. We had a clutch pedal.
Yes, yes.
And sometimes when, you'd forget or you wouldn't put the clutch down enough. And if you try and change the gears of the
Yeah, yeah,
car,
yeah. Right.
oh my God, it makes one hell of a
Great
noise. And you
metaphor.
hear the metal
Yeah.
crunching and that they will break and the sparks will fly. So you put the
Right.
clutch pedal down, you go into
Right.
neutral, and
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
can change gear to go up a hill or down a hill,
Yeah.
faster, slower. So it's that clutch, it's that
Beautiful.
neutral kind of positivity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a great metaphor. What a great metaphor. And that's exactly right. It's sort of like in order to engage, you have to first disengage, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, who was it? The artist. I think it was might have been, it's either Pablo Casals or Picasso. I've gotten them confused now. But he said every act of creation is first an act of destruction. It's like first you've got to stop doing something
Mm.
and not let it continue so that you could do something different, right? So that pause is built in all along the way.
Yeah. Beautiful. And from that platform, that pause, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anything. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I've got a couple more questions to squeeze in, Dan.
Sure,
I'm
sure,
going to be a
sure.
bit greedy. The first one, just in brief, the virtual gratitude visit. What's
Yeah.
that and how can we use that? Or just the general idea of gratitude and identifying what we're grateful for. How can we build that into our life?
One of the things when I became a Marty's student and went back to study positive psychology was reading about one of the first interventions in positive psychology that he actually did in his class, which was called the gratitude visit. And it was just beautiful, simple, but it was one of the first times that they were able to show that engaging in something positive, like writing a letter to somebody that you feel um, uh, you have gratitude for, but maybe didn't fully express it, right? That once people did that, then they had to deliver the letter. And what they found out is that the person who wrote the letter felt good, delivering it felt good, receiving it felt good, and importantly, in the original research, just from doing that, they showed that people's depression lifted, and it stayed uh, in a good place for about a month.
Wow.
right? So one intervention had this ripple effect, and it was really the beginning of this idea that doing something to increase a positive affect would reduce negativity, and somehow in reducing that negativity, it had a sustainable effect. Beautiful, simple, and elegant, right? Um, but what I noticed about it, I shouldn't say and what I noticed about it was that it was limited in its application because the person had to be alive that you were delivering the gratitude to. You had to be able to write in order to write the letter.
Mm.
You had to be able to somehow find them and deliver it. And I thought, psychodrama is absolutely the perfect vehicle for because you don't need to write. Remember, I was working with people who had intellectual capacities below 70, right? Who often couldn't write. And now there's all this work being done in positive psychology. How are we gonna translate this to people who can't read and write? So that was first. Second thing was, um, what about people who have been really kind to you, really loving to you, that you want to express gratitude to, who have passed on, who may no longer be available, who have moved away, but you remember their kindness and you want to do that. So when you put these together, psychodrama is like the perfect solution for this
Mm.
because we could use an empty chair. And what I invite people to do is get two chairs, put one across from it, and imagine the person sitting in that chair that you want to express gratitude for. Now, it doesn't have to be somebody who's not available. I mean, if I want to express gratitude to my friend, I can imagine that he's in that chair too. He's very much alive, But if it was my father who's passed away, I could use that. Or if it was somebody that I don't have access to, the empty chair provides a vehicle for that to happen. And the first thing you do is you sit and you soak in a little bit of what it feels like to be in their presence, so that you take a moment to activate the sociometry, the social aspect of that, reawaken that inside of you. And then you express your gratitude. So it's a verbal expression of that. And in that verbal expression, you just take your time to say what maybe you didn't get a chance to say to that person. Now, here's the big kicker with this, and this is the part. This thing has won some awards and things and whatever, but it's really Moreno's original theory because then you reverse roles and you become the person that you've expressed the gratitude toward. Now, in that exchange, in the role reversal, this is where the magic of this happens because now you're the sender and the receiver. You are not only giving, you're receiving this. So you become the person that you've just given that gratitude for. And in doing that, we experience something called embodied cognition, meaning that I've only moved 3 feet away, but I'm now playing the role. This is how they train actors, right? You're playing the role of somebody else. You're in that other space, in that other mind, and you're there. And now you've received it. After you receive it, usually there's a thank you involved. Then you come on back to your original seat and close it out. It's usually boom, 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 very quickly because the unconscious is doing that drama at 1,000 miles an hour, so it doesn't really take very long. Now, in that role, that is incredibly satisfying. And one of the reasons it's satisfying is because you're both the giver and the receiver.
Mm.
There has to be something transcendent that evolves from that because you have to see it from the 10,000-foot view, and that part of you, in a Zen sort of way, um, realizes that when we give, we receive. Right? It goes back to the spiritual core, right? That giving is receiving, and so it's a very subtle way of doing both of those. Um, And the last thing I'll say about this is my friends run a course at NYU called The Science of Happiness. And each semester they have me come in to do a demonstration of this. And I think it's the largest course NYU has. It's like 500 people. It's a huge amphitheater.
Wow.
And every time I've done it, people cry all the time because they have, and that's actually part of receiving gratitude, is that these are not tears of pain, they're tears of recognition and awareness, and so, but people very often, 9 times out of 11, cry. And someone had a faculty member from another facility was coming to see me do it because he had heard about it, wanted to see, but there was some problems him getting in, so he comes in late, and he opens the back door. And he's about 20 minutes late. So I'm already in the middle of the drama. There's a protagonist on stage. There's 500 people watching. He opens the door and everybody in the room is crying. The protagonist is crying. The audience is crying. Everybody is crying. And you could hear a pin drop, right? He opens the back door and he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought this was positive psychology." And people are going, "Yeah, it is positive psychology." So it's the integration of emotions as well as just the positive ones.
Beautiful, Dan. Thank you. And that's the flow, the giving and the receiving, being open to both. And that's life. Dan, thank you. Oh, wow. I wish we had more time. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you, David.
Before we go, let's just spend a bit of time. Can you just tell us about your work, the books that you've written and are writing, as well as the courses where you're teaching in? Tell folks where to go to find them, what they're called, because you're really doing amazing work out there.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
David. Just I have two memoirs. I'll mention those. One is called "Confessions of a Former Child," a therapist memoir, which takes a humorous look in many of the stories at what it's like being a psychologist. And then my memoir called "American Snake Pit," which is about my role in deinstitutionalizing Willowbrook, which was the most infamous asylum in the United States, who had people who were intellectually and psychiatrically involved. That was kind of like my beginning. So those are two memoirs. Probably the best known book is "Learned Hopefulness," and that really came about from my work with Marty and his work on the neurobiology of the brain's hope circuit. And but it's a very practical guide about what you can do to facilitate hope. And then the positivity effect, which is about hope, empowerment, resilience, and optimism, the acronym HERO. And it's about how you use those things in combination. And the book I'm working on right now is called "Unlock Your Soul." It's about the secrets of wholeness and the science of fulfillment or transcendence. That's the working title, so we'll see what it becomes. But that's about the intersection between positive psychology and spiritual growth. So
I can't wait to read that.
that'll
Amazing.
be downstream. Thanks for asking about that, David.
Yeah. And any websites as well, folks could go to, and we'll pop them in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Well, so, dantomasulo.com has pretty much any of the stuff that I'm working on. And I write blogs about the latest science and stuff like that, so people can sign up for that. Easy thing to do, and it's all free. There's no subscriptions or whatever. Just write what's next, right?
Beautiful. Dan, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. I feel like I am in flow right now, and I'm going to just keep this going as long as I can. So honestly, thank you for all the work you've done over the years, and you're continuing to innovate and spread amazing teachings around the world. So thank you.
Well, David, right back at you, by the way, because I'm in flow now too, and that has to be the result of this conversation
and
with you.
receiving here. Okay.
Yes, yeah. It's a virtual avalanche of flow.
Beautiful. Thanks for being on the Healing Mindset podcast. It's been a pleasure, Dan. Thanks again for watching, and thanks to our sponsor, Marpa Minds, a network of next Next Generation mental health clinics offering Spravato and ketamine treatment for depression. Go to marpaminds.com for more information.